Welcome to the News Center. In recent years, our political class has been making history of a different kind, quarreling over textbooks which our students read in schools about history. There were differences over medieval history, there were differences over modern history, there were differences over ancient history. There was no dimension of history on which there were no differences. To discuss this politics of history and the history of politics, we have with us today some eminent historians. I start with my left. On my left sits Professor Aditya Mukherjee from the JNU. Next to him is Professor Mridula Mukherjee, also from the JNU. On my right are Professor Basu, formerly from Delhi University, now associated with the All India Women's Conference. And next to her, Professor Kapil Kumar from IGNOU. Starting from you, Professor Mukherjee, how do you view this? Is this history or histrionics?
This is the intervention of politics in history, as you said, but it is not in the manner that it is quite often seen, which is that with every change in regime, a new history textbook comes in. This has happened, I want to emphasize, only for the first time. When systems change, not when governments change. When the colonial system changed, when independence came, the independent India decided in the 1960s to have a set of textbooks which would be different from the colonial and the communal books of the earlier times. Books which used to say Angrezi Raj ki barkatein and that sort of thing. And again, in the 1990s, when an effort was made to change the democratic, open, civil libertarian system, that you saw politics intervening. For the first time, the BJP regime tried to now bring in books which completely overturned the vision of modern India that independent India had.
Was it surprising to you, Professor Mridula, that people in BJP, when they came to power, they started tinkering with the textbooks? Was it surprising to you, given the fact that theirs has always been the fight for the mind of India?
Not only that, it's more than that. It's not surprising because I think those of us who are students of how communalism has grown in modern India, and specifically those of us who have seen, during the period of the freedom struggle as well, history has been a very important part of the communal weapon. In fact, I would say that history lies, a version of history, an interpretation of history lies at the heart of a communal agenda. If you cannot convince the people that there was oppression of the Muslims in medieval India, if you cannot convince people that Hindu civilization was the greatest ever in the world, if you cannot convince the people that partition was caused only by Muslims wanting a separate Pakistan and not because there was a colonial intervention also, there was a policy of divide and rule and there was Hindu communalism and all. If you cannot distort history, it is very difficult to take your communal project forward, because communal project does not have a vision of the future. It only has an interpretation of the past with which it wants to come to power and then change society according to that vision of the past. So in many ways as well, it doesn't have a different vision of industrialization, of development, of agriculture. There is no communal vision on all these things, but there is a national vision. There is a vision of the freedom struggle. There is, you could say, there's a left vision. There's Nehru's developmental vision. There's a capitalist vision, but there is no communal vision of society. So they can only rely on this kind of revanchist glorification, vilification.
I think I'll bring in Professor Basu at this juncture. What do you think this kind of early indoctrination of students, does it click? Is it effective in a society like ours, which is so interlinked now with the outside world? At the click of a mouse, you can find various versions of events in history. So how effective could this have been as a weapon?
I think it is a very effective weapon. It's a very effective weapon when children are young, because that is where their mindset is framed, where if you influence them, they believe there is a lot of sanctity attached to the printed book and what they study in schools. And if the book tells them something, that this is true, textbook tells them, I think that is bound to influence their minds a great deal. And remember, many of these students who pass out of class 12 will not do history again. I mean, they are going to go into various other disciplines. So their image, I mean, what they believe history to be will be what has been taught to them in school. You know, maybe if you go on to university, you will do further research, you will find out different points of view and so on. But I think at the school level, it is extremely important that you get the correct version of history. You can click a mouse, but I don't know how many of them click mouses for history. They may do for other things. So, but I think the textbook that they have in school, really, they will often say when you ask them, but they will say, but my book says this, you know. And so I think this is very important.
Professor Kumar, how do you view this entire
I think
controversy?
it seems I am the odd man out in the sense that I am going to raise some very hard and fundamental questions in this regard. See, if textbooks influences so much on the child, which I also will tend to agree, then my one question is that since last 30 years, we read Romila Thapar, we read Bipin Chandra, we read Satish Chandra. Then how come so much communalism emerged in the society? If every child in this country had read secular history of Romila Thapar, of Bipin Chandra, of Satish Chandra, then why did your country got so much communalized? I'll put in another question in this sense, you see. We know of Soviet Union. And we also know that what type of history was taught in Soviet Union. And in spite of the entire state-controlled history in Soviet Union, where they talked of class war, where they talked of czars oppression, working class exploitation, all those things was there in history books. Why did a counter-revolution took place in Soviet Union? Where did everything in that society went away? I like to pose this question in a different manner altogether, you see. Firstly, this is not correct information that it is for the first time that history textbooks have been filtered with. There was a massive agitation in Bengal in 77 by the Congress against the history textbooks which were written by, when the syllabus was changed by that state government over there. It can be checked history. Many states have done this in this country from different perspectives, from different point of views. Now, in that situation, the problem is that all those who have written history textbooks for school children, and I'm talking of both this side or that side, I will like to ask this question, that how many of them understand the child's mind at 6th class, 7th class or 8th class? They have been away from school teaching for years together. They have been away from undergraduate teaching from years together. We did not consult the school teachers. We never tested these books on school teachers either, whether they were the earlier books or whether they were the present books. We did not involve a psychologist. You see, we say, yes, communalism should not be taught to the child. It will affect badly. But tell me one thing, if you teach in the same textbook, in 6th class or 7th class, that beef eating was done in ancient India, is it going to be the right thing? We don't teach all the formulas of mathematics in class 6. We don't teach all grammar in class 6. We keep something for class 7, something for class 8, something for BA, something for MA, something for research. Yeah. So why can't we divide history syllabus like this?
Professor Mukherjee, he has raised some fundamental issues. He says that, in fact, his comments have been far-reaching. In fact, what he's saying is that the entire system of the way the books are written in our country has something wanting in that, and he also says that reading books at an early age doesn't make you communal or secular. Is that the broad point you made?
Because I say that because
I would like to respond to this. You see, his first point, that if Bipin Chandra and Romila Thapar's books were read by everybody, then how come there is communalism? First thing, these books were written for the NCERT, which books are given only to CBSE. Only a few thousand schools at best have CBSE. You know, the overwhelming majority of Indian people do not read these books. Whereas on the other hand, there are at least 20,000 RSS schools, where Shishu Niketans and Vidya Jyoti, Vidya Bharati schools, where you are taught poison. In fact, the report on Gujarat, a lot of work has shown in Gujarat over that Gujarat could not have happened if it was not preceded by about 20 years, by nearly 20 years, with the kind of poison that the children's, with which the children's mind were being poisoned, right? And in fact, the National Integration Council, when it first recommended to the government that the NCERT now ask secular scholars to write books, it was after the Jabalpur riots, and after a national sort of soul-searching occurred, they came to the conclusion that unless, and this was what Gandhiji used to say repeatedly also, unless you take poison out of the school children's textbooks, you will not be able to build a secular society. What we saw in Gujarat, KPS Gill, when he was sent to quell the riots, and after the riots stopped, he said, I have dealt with riots in Punjab, I have dealt with riots in Northeast, but here was an occasion when after the riots had stopped, he said, I found no remorse. Now that means you have made some kind of monsters out of people who don't even feel remorse after they've, in a point of agitation, murdered people.
Yeah,
that can happen only when, since a child, when you teach them Heidegger's ideology, that Muslims are Yavana snakes, hissing snakes. And what do you do to hissing snakes? You crush their heads. Now, if this is what a child learns, and I have got with me texts where I'll show you what is taught in the RSS schools.
Kumar, he has a point.
Can I
I'll
just
answer that
come
point.
back?
I'll-
I think Kapil has made a lot of points, and I think if you give us the opportunity
please,
to
yeah.
counter, take on some.
I don't think we are
more-
sharing ideas rather than sort of
more-
confronting
yeah,
each other.
Yeah, no. In fact, I would like to, in fact, broaden the discussion and say that there is a consensus in our society which was built during the period of the freedom struggle, that this is a kind of society we are trying to achieve, and there was a consensus that we are trying to move towards a secular society. This consensus was shared by all sections of Indian opinion, and the communalists were the only section that remained outside this consensus. Both Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, whatever be their particular version of communalism, but the rest of Indian society all agreed that we want to establish a secular India. The demand for a Hindu Raj, which was made immediately after and at the time of partition by the communal forces, was rejected by the Indian people. And after the assassination of Gandhiji, particularly, as you know, when the RSS was in fact banned for a period of time, when it was well known that Savarkar, Hindu Mahasabha, and Godse, who was himself an RSS member, were deeply involved in the whole conspiracy. There was a consensus in Indian society that this is not the direction in which we want to go. Therefore, I am saying the history books which our children read must reflect that societal consensus. In the United States today, there is a consensus that racism will not be taught. Can you teach racism today to the children in the United States and say, despite not teaching racism, still a race riot may occur or an attack may occur? That is not an argument for saying that our books should be racist.
You know, that
and that these kinds of ideas should
Professor
not be.
Basu, may I come to you for
Yes,
a minute?
yes.
You see, there are two divergent views which have been taken here. One is that the impressionable mind isn't really that impressionable, and if that was so, they wouldn't have any riots, or any communal thinking now, as it was witnessed in recent years. And the other point is that it is not just the schools which teach the NCERT books, but it is also about schools which are run by organizations which have an attitude, which have an ideology to pursue, on which there is no consensus.
And they belong to all communities.
On which there is no consensus.
They belong to all communities.
Yes, yes.
It is not that it
And,
is
one,
only
and,
one
and personally
community.
speaking, my personal view, Professor Kumar, is that while indeed there have been aberrations in our history where communalism was on the rise, but I think that it has been eventually defeated, and all forces which have done exclusive politics in our country, sectarian politics, have sooner or later come to a view that this is not going to take them any far, that they will have to at some stage do inclusive stuff.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that was an aside. What do you have to say?
Well,
about it?
when you asked me the first question, my answer was that yes, impressionable minds of young students are really influenced by what they read. I'm not saying, therefore, that textbooks, first of all, as Aditya said, it's not all schools use NCERT textbooks. And there are large number of schools, whether they be RSS schools or they may be madarsas or whatever they are, they don't use these textbooks. And therefore, you can't say that textbooks are the only way of forming young people. All I'm saying is that bad or communal textbooks can have an ill influence. I'm not saying that there aren't other influences in society. And to say that, Russian, because the state had the Soviet Union controlled textbooks, and therefore why did the collapse of the Soviet Union take place? I don't think that is the correct. I mean, textbooks don't have, textbooks are not the only formative influence of any society. No, but at the same time, textbooks which convey the wrong message can have a derogatory effect. That's all I'm saying. As he said rightly, I come from Gujarat and I know what was happening in Gujarat in the last 15-20 years. So the indoctrination of the mind can take place in many different ways. It's not just through textbooks. But I don't think that is a defense of saying that textbooks don't matter. Teach what you want.
We are forgetting another aspect in this. That equally important than the textbook is the teacher in the classroom who's reading out or who's interpreting that textbook to the students. Tell me one thing, how many efforts have been made to upgrade the history teaching skills of school teachers? At the university level, you have put refresher courses, you have put administrative staff colleges. At how many levels for the school teacher? I know of this thing and I'm not sure. You see, when I was in 7th class, my teacher taught me that so long Aurangzeb will not burn 1000 Janeus, he will not have his breakfast. I got up in the class and I said, Master Ji, what is the sense in telling this to me now? I was in 7th class and I was in a very mufassal area in a Meerut small college. So don't underestimate the questioning ability of our young children. They are very open, they are very wide, they raise the question. The problem is, the first task of historian in this society is today to wedge the gap between the communities. Unfortunately, and I am making a very strong statement, we historians have developed our shops. We cache our ideologies. And instead of bridging that gap in the society, we believe in widening that gap because then only my theory will go and my theory will go.
Oh, that's an important concern. I think that's a confession every student must take note of. I think that this is one confession, and I think I must compliment Professor Kumar for being so candid and so honest in admitting that. But I,
so long as he doesn't,
but I don't
want to about the historians.
I have seen this.
Everybody speak for themselves.
I have seen this happening. That someone becomes head of the department. So overnight, the ideology is changed, the approach is changed of everyone in that department.
And I think that
after 1 year, someone else becomes the head of the department. So overnight, those ideologies, they change again over there.
Anyway, I think that we must trust the native wisdom of the people of this country, not just young people, but also people who have grown up, because they have shown that they are much wiser than those who rule them or those who teach them. Many number of times they have done it. They have done it in repeated elections. In this country, we saw a very beautiful woman in Indira Gandhi being defeated by a man who was otherwise a great politician, who almost looked like a monkey. So let us not underplay the native wisdom of the people of this country. But coming back to Professor Mukherjee, he has raised some pertinent issues about the people who take the message to the students, that is the teachers, the Acharya. The Pratha of Acharya, I think, has suffered several knocks in this country. We don't have teachers today who are really honest about their job, and quite a few of them might be ideologically motivated. In fact, in states like Gujarat, this is a phenomenon that is rampant. That you have teachers who are themselves ideologically motivated, and that is why you see this kind of a upsurge, communal upsurge. Though in the last elections, I must still again point out that that upsurge seems to be receding. So I think again the native wisdom is coming into play. People can see through the games of politicians and maybe also the games of historians.
There is a point, on this which has direct relationship to the current controversy on the books. You're right that sometimes the teacher, or in fact, like in UP, the RSS Karyavas, the person who was their intellectual workers, were attached to schools. They were to provide them the intellectual support. No, that of course would be disastrous, but I'm not talking about that. There is a shift that has taken place recently in attacking these books of the most eminent historians India has produced, of whom only India, but in fact the historical community in the world is proud. They are some of the best historians of Indian history in the world. Anyway, the recent attack has not been on that. The recent attack is on saying that they don't understand the child's mind, as Kapil Kumar said. That they don't know pedagogy. You know, the attack has taken on a different angle altogether. That you must learn how to learn a child's mind. So the issue has shifted from substance, because on substance you cannot question them.
Yeah,
you know, they are absolutely.
I was the first one to raise this issue.
The issue is now shifted. They don't know how
Any
to teach.
political motives. I am talking as a professional historian, that you look at the professionally look at history, that the teachers are to be trained for secular history. And what is the content? If it is politics, then it was Delhi Assembly which started this controversy
So may I-
about the old
Can
book.
I just-
because
come
I'm
back
not
to
a
the question
spokesman.
of the
I'm not here
teachers?
for
Professor Kumar.
RSS. But each party played according to its own
Professor
thing.
Kumar, Professor
And let not the student, you see, one more thing over here is the problem is, how secular are we? Is casteism secular? If you confine secularism only to communalism, and your entire society is divided on caste lines, how much the educationist, being the best of educationists and having read the best of texts, when they go for appointments, why they appoint persons from their caste? Not even from their caste, from even their gotra. It has gone to that level.
Yeah, that's true.
The things are divided on those lines. Look at that totality in this country. You see, I am not afraid of any ism dominating. In the name of either for the ism or against that ism, the way criminals are taking over the politics of this country. Will the criminals tomorrow sitting in parliament, either party, any party,
No, I think that
decide what will be the
that is
extent
not the subject of debate. Now, Professor Kumar, I must intervene here, and because we are running out of time, I will take a quick vote on a single question amongst all of you. Don't you think we can trust the wisdom of our people and our children, and let us give them both sides of history as it was seen over the period of time, and let them make up their own mind?
100%.
Why should there be, would you agree with this idea?
Yes.
That there should not be a single textbook of history?
Absolutely not.
That there should be a source which should be identified, sources should be identified, and let children pick up from those sources, maybe all sources, and come to their own determination. Would you agree to that, sir?
Absolutely. Let 100 flowers bloom. Let all ideas be there, but let they be done by professional historians, because history is a discipline, just like physics or maths or anything else. Let it not be done by politicians.
That's right.
Let not the RSS headquarters say that this history is bad, or let not even the CPM headquarters, for that matter, say that this history is
So
bad.
I think from
let the historians
so
decide.
I think from what our panelists have discussed over this short period, one can safely say that on one point they agree, that education should be kept above politics, that institutions that determine as to what is to be read and what isn't to be read should be above politics. They should be headed by people who are their own masters, who are intellectuals in their own right, and who have the respect and regard of communities, teaching communities, learning communities across the board. Thank you very much. It is a controversial issue which cannot be settled in 20 minutes. Maybe some other day we'll pick it up and come back to you again. Thank you very much.
क्या हो रहा है डिस्कशन हिंदी में
शुरू, yeah.